Hello, today I'm going to talk about bisexuality in psychoanalytic theory. Bisexuality is one of the foundational concepts in Freud's theory. Unlike his other foundational concepts, which have been subjected to a great deal of critique from the subsequent generations of psychoanalysts and undergone significant revisions, bisexuality is used pretty much the same way today in psychoanalytic theorizing as it was back in Freud's day. So what did Freud mean by bisexuality? Basically, he adapted this term from the evolutionary biology of his time, where it was used to denote the fact that both human males and human females have physical characteristics of both sexes. Freud extended this idea into the psychological realm, claiming that males and females were psychologically bisexual as well. And because sexual orientation to Freud was a function of one's psychic sex, that is, someone who is identified with his or her father and thus is psychically masculine, is going to be attracted to women, whereas someone who is identified with his or her mother and is thus psychically feminine is going to be attracted to men. It's always complementary. Saying that all humans were psychically bisexual therefore implied that everyone could be attracted to men and women. Now this state of bisexuality was in Freudian theory considered a kind of primordial state. This was how people functioned as young children, not yet caring whether they or the people who excite them sexually are male or female. And this was also how the deep, primitive, unconscious layers of an adult's psyche operated. The actual mature adult functioning for Freud required adopting either a masculine or a feminine identity, and by extension the object choice that goes with that identity. Masculine object choice for feminine people and feminine object choice for masculine people. Mature bisexual identity or mature practice of bisexuality was a logical impossibility. Bisexuality in Freud's theory was a highly theoretical construct that did not correspond and moreover could not correspond to anything in the real world. This usage of the term is out of line with the contemporary understanding of sex, gender, and sexual orientation as categories that are relatively independent of each other. The idea prevalent today, both in science and in common usage, that one's biological sex does not predefine one's core gender identity, nor does one biological sex or core gender identity predefine one's sexual orientation. In other words, we recognize today that any combination of physical, sexual characteristics, gender identity, and sexual orientation is possible. Moreover, we no longer think of either of these three categories, sex, gender, and orientation, as binary. We recognize that a person can be born intersex, that many people have fluid gender identities encompassing both masculine and feminine identifications, and that mature adults can be attracted to more than one gender. Among Freud's best-known contributions to the theory of sexuality, his distinctions between instinct and aim and between sex, psychic identification, and object choice paved the way for a more nuanced and less biologically determined understanding of sexuality. His concept of bisexuality, by contrast, remained remarkably over-inclusive as well as inextricably linked to biology. It referred simultaneously to disharmonious or shifting gender identity, dual attraction, and the universal sexual ambiguity of the human anatomy. Not surprisingly, a concept that was so loaded confused Freud himself. He complained that bisexuality embarrasses all inquiries into the subject. In other words, he took a look at this theoretical construct that he had coined and said, wait a minute, what does this even mean? Continued use of the term bisexuality in the Freudian sense in psychoanalytic theorizing and practice is highly problematic and even damaging for several reasons. This breeds conceptual confusion, perpetuates outdated and limiting ideas about gender and sexuality, and and this is in my mind the most pertinent and urgent problem, it leads to pathologizing attitudes towards people who practice bisexuality. Many psychoanalytic clinicians who were never exposed to critique of Freud's ideas about bisexuality to this day conflate the practice of bisexuality and bisexual identity with immaturity, and believe that to become mature, their bisexual patients would need to grow out of bisexuality. Whether held as a conscious belief or an unconscious bias, this attitude can be profoundly invalidating, precluding recognition of patients' mature bisexual identities and practices. Given all that we know today about sex, gender, sexual orientation, and psychological development, there is really no reason to continue to think this way. Thank you.